So you're thinking about making a move to Florida. You're dreaming about the idea of living in that never-ending summer, 300 plus days of sunshine, that true life in paradise. Well, you're not alone. In 2024, we saw the second highest migration in all the country, second only to Texas. And very much like you, just 4 years ago, we were in front of our computers, researching YouTube, looking up sleepy beach towns in America, and we found Venice, Florida.
But Florida's not for everybody, and in today's video, we're going to talk about all those things that your other realtors aren't talking about that are so important before you move down here to Florida. Welcome to This Week in Venice, Florida. I'm Caleb and this is Lanir, and we are relocation experts and realtors here in Southwest Florida.
That's right, folks. Just 4 years ago, Caleb and I were very much like you. We were yearning to live that never-ending summer. We both sold our businesses, packed up our bags, and moved our families all the way to Venice, Florida to live that never-ending summer. But when we got down here, we realized that there was a huge transition. We were no longer in our cold, wintry states. We were in that beautiful and amazing never-ending summer, this beautiful town called Venice, Florida.
And what we realized is there's a lot of things that we didn't consider when we moved down here. One of the big ones, let's talk about it straight out of the gate, let's jump into our list, is the heat and the humidity. The reality of of living down here is the summer months. June, July, August, and September are hot. It is steamy. It is humid. You're going to sweat through that t-shirt. You know a little something about that, Lanir.
The truth is, I'm a bit of a schwitzer is what they call it. I sweat. I sweated when I lived in Maryland. I'm going to sweat now. But the truth is, the humidity can be quite overwhelming, especially those hot summer days, those dog days of summer. You know, it's something that takes a bit of acclimation. And by the time we're usually done shooting our first scene, I have to switch a shirt. Hence why I wear black t-shirts often. It really hides those sweat spots. And that's okay. It's okay to celebrate and be vulnerable and let people know that you sweat. But there's a solution for that. Yeah. You just bring an extra change of clothes. But the reality is it's not for everyone. What we suggest and what we see all too often are people who are typically visiting here are snowbirds. It's a big predominant demographic here, and they're visiting during the best times of the year when the weather is absolutely amazing. But what we encourage, if you're considering being an annual resident, is get down here during those dog days of summer. Make sure that you can acclimate. But the truth is that you do adjust.
Oh, absolutely. You know, one of the things, when we first moved down here, when we lived up north, it was you take that one shower a day, you're good to go. But down here, in the summer, you might take 2, you might take 3. 4. You really end up adjusting your schedule around the heat. In the day, it's hot, but you have long days. So what most people do, they get their exercise in the morning or the afternoon. So with the sun up at 6:30 in the summer, you can get up, take that walk in the morning, head over to the amenity center, get that swim in, maybe go for that bike ride before it gets hot. During the heat of the day, that's when you spend time inside. Take that little siesta, go out to lunch, do your shopping during the day, during the heat, so that you can have all of those tasks finished before the evening. And by the time it hits, 7:30, you finished up dinner, head on over to the beach for that sunset, relax there, just enjoy the nice view, the cool wind off of the water. So it really just comes down to adjusting your schedule for the heat.
Yeah, you may have a heat intolerance, you may have a predisposition. My wife does. I'm not going to divulge all her personal things, but she does have a heat intolerance, and we thought that it would be an impossible feat. But what we found is that your blood thins out. You do adjust. You do get up early. My wife loves to frequent the beach during the dog days of summer. She's there by 7:30 in the morning, where the water's already 82 degrees. It's that perfect temp. By 9:30, 10 o'clock, she's already escaping that heat because it just becomes a little bit unbearable. And then we follow kind of what's a Mediterranean style schedule where you go out to eat late night. There's nothing more beautiful than being able to count on a warm and clear and beautiful evening. But that's what makes it truly special. It's worth adjusting, and if it does get a little bit cold here, if it does drop to 70 degrees, we like to call that sweat-a-wetta down here. So, you do acclimate, you do find yourselves when it's hitting 70 degrees after a time, running for that sweater, for that collegiate hoodie that you once fit. But the reality is it's an adjustment, and it's not for everyone.
Yeah, but the rest of the year is great. You have 8 months of absolute beautiful weather with low humidity, sunny days. It's just a perfect place to live 8 months of the year. But then you have the challenges of that summer heat. It's not insurmountable. It's not something you can get over. Or you can definitely get over it. You just really just need to adjust your schedule accordingly.
Well, the good thing about it, it's predictable. You can count on it. It's going to be hot and humid for 4 months, but then you can count on having the most perfect weather 8 months of the year. Certainly is an amazing trade-off. I remember waiting for the summers back in Maryland. I had a swimming pool, and it was only swimmable about a month and a half. It'd be either too cold, you only have that short season. Here, you get to celebrate it. It's predictable, so you can plan for it.
Absolutely. So I think we've covered enough about weather. Dealing with the summer heat is a challenge, but you do have those glorious spring, fall, and winter months where it's just great here, and Florida is a dream place to live. So let's move on to the next topic, which is a huge pain point in Florida because we deal with it all the time. The national news covers it. Everyone's concerned. And that is insurance.
That's right. You probably have heard the news that Florida's uninsurable. Buildings are sinking. We're falling off a cliff. We're here to dispel a lot of those concerns and to tell you that that's absolutely not true.
And the way we're going to do it is we're going to open our books and we're going to talk about my home and my insurance. But let me give you a little baseline. We have our insurance through State Farm. So we live in a 2,200 square foot home with 2 baths with no pool, and we live on the water. So we have a nice pond out back, so that makes it a little bit more expensive. Our flood zone is AE. So we're actually in a flood zone because part of our lot has that water on it. So just a 1 foot of our yard is AE. So therefore, my whole property is zoned AE. So my insurance would typically be a little bit more expensive than somebody who lives out of a flood zone in flood zone X or X500. So like I said, our insurance is only $2,500 a year. I know you have to put that into perspective. Nationally, some states it's much less expensive than that, and then other states are much more expensive. But at $2,500 a year, we have great coverage. We have, everything that we need. So if a problem comes, whether it's a hurricane or something like that, we're fully covered. We also have an additional flood insurance policy. We'll talk about that. You talk about that in a minute, Lanir, about the difference between those two. But we have flood insurance. That's for those rising waters should the rain come or we have a storm surge. That's what flood insurance is. It's only $650 a year. And for peace of mind, a lot of people, when they move down here, they wonder, should I get flood insurance? For us, we absolutely say, get it your first maybe 1, 2, 3 years. Evaluate what your life's going to be like, how your home withstands the hurricanes, the rain, the seasonal rain, and then you'll have a better understanding if you need that flood insurance. Many people opt not to get it. Our advice is get it. $650 to solve a problem if the water rises and floods your home is a small price to pay and is peace of mind. So if you can afford it, we absolutely recommend you get it. So the moral of the story is you can get insurance, whether it's through national carriers like State Farm. We have plenty of different insurance companies that we can recommend you to, and take your time in doing it. It is almost as important as buying your home and the time you take to buy your home. Go out there, get quotes from multiple different companies, find out who has the best rate, who has the best coverage, because I'm telling you, different companies, it's a wide variety. You really need to do that due diligence and get quotes from many companies.
That's right. It's not a one size fits all, and it certainly isn't a ubiquitous standardized approach. For example, I live in a slightly smaller home. I'm in flood zone X, so there's no worries about flooding there, but I can tell you that I'm paying $6,000 annually. That's for my flood insurance, my hurricane policy, and my homeowner's policy. Now that's significantly higher. The reason is I was excited. I was one of those people in the prelude of my journey. I just couldn't wait to get here. I didn't think twice about doing my diligence. I found the first person who would answer the phone and give me a full conversation, and I said, sign me up, because the truth is that you're going to pay a higher price than the national average. That's the cost of living in paradise. That's the cost of living by the coast. But once you've accepted that expense, once you've accepted that this is what you're getting in return, you really understand that this is a value in relative terms. Now, I am definitely shopping around for policy. We've learned a lot. There's a lot of intricacies and specifics why I'm still with the same insurer. But what we realize is that people often skip that step. They're so excited that they're not thinking about that annual expense, that long-term expense, and all the savings. That's why Caleb and I are here. We're here to save you from yourself. We understand what you're feeling, the excitement. You're ready to make that leap of faith, but we believe slow and steady is going to win that race. Like Caleb said, we've got amazing people we can refer you that are quick to respond. They're going to give you those quotes, but we encourage you, start getting those quotes now, especially if you have an address that you're honing in on. Use an address within a neighborhood and to get an example so you can start getting those quotes. But remember, folks, it's not a one size fits all. You have to take in consideration. You have your homeowner's policy. That's gonna cover your wear and tear, breakage, some cosmetic things, a pipe bursting. But remember, flood insurance is a peace of mind. Flood insurance, we've seen it all too often. People move down here, they find a flood zone X home, because Caleb and I, we always encourage our clients to live out of the flood zone. And even if it's in a flood zone X, what Caleb and I do, we take it the extra step. We go survey those neighborhoods. We look for that low-lying elevation, that lowest property within that flood zone X, because we all know when it rains, and we've had some record-breaking rains this year, that's made everyone reconsider whether or not they should have flood insurance. People who were in flood zone X would never get rain. There was no risk of it for 30 to 50 years, were flooded out because of the record-breaking rains. And it wasn't just local. This was a national event. Imagine all the people who never took that into consideration, whose homes were destroyed, and what they could have done. They could have saved all of the integrity, could have saved themselves all the trouble, just incurring an additional $600 expense. So we encourage you to add that additional expense. Hurricane, that's another expense. That's an additional. Remember, hurricanes are those high winds, rains penetrating the roof. These are all things to consider. So if you need more specifics, if you need someone to walk you through, Caleb and I are here to help.
And we have tons of great people that we can refer you to, so you're going to get a good piece of advice, from whether it's from us about insurance or those agents that can explain it to you in depth.
Remember, don't save drops to lose gallons. If you're anything like my wife, who jumps to the countertops every time she sees a creepy crawler or a flying bug, you may want to reconsidering moving down to Florida. We live in Zone 10A. It is warm all year long, and bugs and plants flourish here. They grow to sizes that you've never experienced before, from giant spiders that, yes, are poisonous, and yes, I've been bitten by one. I did survive the tail. Or those no-see-ums, those little bugs are so microscopic, hence the name of no-see-um. We even have no-see-um screens just to keep them out in our lanais. But these are things you absolutely have to take in consideration. If you have allergies, if you're someone who's hypersensitive to any one of these bites, you really have to take some extra steps. But we've learned some things living out here.
Yeah, absolutely. There are ways to mitigate the bugs. Yes, if you don't treat for them, bugs are going to run wild, and nature's going to take its course. But there are ways that you can resolve these issues, and that's with a proper extermination plan. They're incredibly affordable, for anywhere between $100 to $150 a quarter. They'll come to your home, whether they treat inside and outside. Most of the time, personally, I prefer that they treat outside, because I don't want those chemicals in my house. I'd rather treat them outside where the bugs are before they get in. But for a small expense, you can resolve that. I've lived in my home for a little over 3.5 years, and I've never had a single bug, not a palmetto bug, not an ant, not anything in my house other than the occasional mosquito that sneaks in. But there are ways that you can mitigate this. Also, if you live in an HOA, if you're one of these gated communities, many, if not all of these communities treat for mosquitoes and those no-see-ums in the ponds that they have in the neighborhood. So they deal with it proactively. Also, Sarasota County has a treatment program where they treat for mosquitoes. So overall, there's not that many, but we're not going to say there aren't some, for sure. If you live near some of those backwater areas along the coast where it's fresh water and there's no treatment process, you might have some mosquitoes there. You might have some of those bigger bugs, the bigger spiders. But again, get a proper extermination plan and you can take care of these things.
The truth is, the bugs aren't going anywhere. They were here long before we got here. They're going to stay long after we're gone. But you can coexist. There are the natural remedies. Maybe you don't want to use that bug off and all those chemical treatments. Reach out to me. My wife has some natural remedies, things that she's used that are tried and true. And she's able to go out, escape all those bug bites that she's hypersensitive to. But there are certain things that you can do. Make sure that there's no standing water within your yard. bugs, mosquitoes, they love swampy, watery areas. And if you're living in one of these newer constructions, which Caleb and I predominantly focus on, we push a lot of our clients to those newer builds that give you all those assurances that we speak about in all of our videos. But you're not going to find hordes of bugs there. You're going to find very minimal bugs flying around. And it's not just the chemical treatments, it's the keeping these landscapes dry and aerated and plush, so the bugs don't have to go into your home to look for food or for warmth. They have plenty for them to stay busy outside. But the reality is, if you suffer from bug bites, if you're someone who's hypersensitive, you're going to need to take some precautions. Put on those oils, those sprays, avoid swampy areas, live in a newer home, make sure that your AC is running, that your dehumidifier is running. As long as you control moisture, as long as you control your trash and debris, you shouldn't have any issues. Now, one cool thing I like to do is throw a crumb or two out in my lanai and see how quickly it gets eaten up. It's an absolute spectacle. If you're like me and you love wildlife, you love the insects, you like dapping up an ant or two and saying hi, sending them on their way. They're certainly, they'll be there to clean things up, but you can coexist with the bugs. It certainly is something that you have to take some precaution and some extra measures, but they're going to be here.
Let's talk about some of the other wildlife out here that we get. There's a lot of awesome wildlife, all of the migratory birds. I swear, if you live on a pond, it is a bird watcher's paradise, from the egrets to the ibis to the aningas, the great blue herons, the great white herons. There are just birds everywhere. All the birds of prey, the osprey floating over the ponds and swooping down and grabbing those fish out of the water. The wildlife here is incredible.
It's a regular occurrence, and something that Caleb and I probably experience at least once every couple weeks, where we stop in the middle of the traffic to help a turtle crossing the road get to their site. Now, when you see a turtle crossing the road, always make sure to take them in the same direction they were heading. Try to anticipate barriers that are in front of them, but it's a natural occurrence. When you live out in this warm weather, Zone 10A, animals and wildlife are going to be in abundance.
Now let's talk about the wildlife that nobody wants to talk about, but we're going to embrace, and are there alligators in Florida?
No, definitely not.
Pretty much the rule of thumb down in Florida is, if there's fresh water, there's an alligator in it. Somewhere in that pond, whether maybe it's today or tomorrow, but there's an alligator nearby, and you need to be aware of it. But it's nothing to be scared of. It's more about just being aware. Let's just put it in perspective. If you're somebody who lives up in the north and you love going out into nature and taking those hikes, aren't you concerned about bears? They could kill you too. But it's more about just being aware of your surroundings, and it's the same thing with alligators. Don't hang out by the pond's edge. Don't go fishing. Don't take your dog close to the water to go, do its business. Always stay away from the waters, a safe distance, maybe 10, 15 feet, so that you know that you're not going to have an issue. But honestly, we love our alligators. The one in a pond behind our house, he's part of the family. We name him. I guess pretty much the common name for every alligator is Allie. And we love Allie. She's part of our neighborhood. She comes, she suns out in our backyard, but as soon as we walk out, she takes off. She wants nothing to do with us because we're their only predators. So as long as you keep a safe distance from alligators, they can actually be kind of fun to live with.
Gators are such a Florida thing. Now, I know gators exist all over the world, but gators are such a Florida thing. Only in Florida can someone name a gator like Caleb has. Only in Florida. It reminds me of a story. There was a guy who was in one of the local watering holes called Banditos, and he went outside because there was a long line for the bathroom, and he stood by that watering hole, and he went ahead and did his business, only to find himself pooling and wrestling with a gator. Now, unfortunately, this guy lost his arm. You would think that this is a travesty. It's a sad story. This guy was celebrated like a local hero. He gets free drinks for life. He's at the bar. He's walking around. You'll get to a place and, hey, did you see the guy who lost his arm? He was just here. Now, don't be the guy who loses their arm. You have to have a healthy respect for wildlife here. Gators, I remember moving out here. I remember hiking with one of my buddies, and we got to an area. We saw a gator. We were super excited, but then we realized that there was another gator in the watering hole behind us. Before you knew it, we thought gators were traversing from the trees. We freaked out. We ran to the car. You have to gain a healthy respect. Don't get overly courageous. Don't go in there trying to show off to your friends how you can wrestle a gator.
Don't take a selfie with the gator.
Don't take a selfie. But you find yourself really building an affinity. I remember one day sitting in our old office, and I'm talking to Caleb, and all of a sudden I see a huge gator going along the sidewalk, crossing the road. Normally in any other state, this would be, SWAT teams and people guns drawn, shooting the gator down. What you saw is the town came out to celebrate. In this particular case, the gator's name was Kevin. I found that out. It was one that lived in a watering hole for many years, and it was just out looking for a mate, looking for a friend. So remember, those gators are out looking for friends. They don't have you in mind as the friend. So just keep that in mind. But once you live here, once you learn their habits, that they're going to be here, remember, like Caleb said, don't walk your dog along the water's edge. Don't go splashing in there. Don't let your little ones there. Have a healthy respect. You respect nature. Nature will respect you back. Part of the reason you're probably considering moving to a sleepy beach town is you're trying to escape the traffic, the hustle and bustle. I lived right outside Washington, D.C., and all too often it took me about 45 minutes to make my first left turn just to get on Interstate 495. And I can tell you, I couldn't take another day moving here to this beautiful and quiet beach town. You really have a chance to go cruising with unobstructed traffic. But it's not always the case. Okay.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'd say 9 months of the year, April through December, it's a pretty quiet beach town, limited traffic. You can get pretty much anywhere in 5-10 minutes, no problems. You're not going to sit through a light more than once. But when the snowbirds come, that's January, February, March. Sometimes it extends a little bit longer, depending on how far north you live. But the population literally doubles. We go from right around 28,000 all the way up to 56,000 people in the Venice area. So 3 months of the year, it is busy. It takes twice as long to get anywhere. Going to the beach, that trek's going to be, instead of 15 minutes, you're going to look for maybe 20 to 30 minutes to make that same drive.
Put things in perspective, many people who snowboard here are coming from very large metropolitan hubs, those cold, wintry states. So when they get here, it's almost a nothing burger, a non-issue. Traffic doesn't feel overwhelming to them. But if you're local, you live here year round, getting used to getting to and from that beach in under 5 minutes, going into your favorite food spot or watering hole, getting immediate service, waiting in line becomes very difficult. The beautiful thing about it is that you get this place all to yourself majority of the year, but you have to subscribe. Snowbirds are part of the influx. Snowbirds are part of what makes it unique. And truthfully, snowbirds often turn into annual residents. They often come out here. They start with 3 months, then 4 months, then 5 months. As they acclimate to that warmer weather, they find it's much more difficult to go back to their cold, wintry states, and they start to extend it where they become annual residents. But traffic here can be a pain point. The more you get closer up to Sarasota, that metropolitan hub, you certainly feel the pain. You certainly feel those pinch points, the areas where infrastructure may not support this huge influx. But as you get down to Venice, it really matriculates, it slows down, and the vibe out here is go low and slow, go cruising, put on your jam, put your top down, get into a nice, easy mode, easy vibe. Traffic really starts to dissipate, and you appreciate having people come in the year round and celebrating your town. To leave it to yourself when the dog days of summer are here. But it's something you absolutely get used to, and in relative terms, compared to anywhere we've lived in the past and anywhere where these people are migrating from, traffic is really not a pain point. You may hear otherwise depending on when people are talking. They sum it and generalize Florida as a whole. We're very unique in our own regard.
But it's important to remember that if you're going to move down here and become not only just a vacationer or a snowbird, to realize that the traffic definitely is different at different times of the year.
Yeah, but
snowbird season is going to be busy, but the rest of the year is going to be wide open, and you need to open your eyes and fully embrace that and accept that it's going to take a little bit longer at certain times of the year.
Yeah, you have such a big migration of people coming from all the respective states, different habits, different traffic patterns. So you really have to take a deep breath and have some patience. The beautiful thing about it, this is a perfect place to take a deep breath and slow down.
It's not a bad place to just look around for a second, wait out that person who in their state, you can't make a right turn on red. You'll find yourself sitting at a light in that turn lane, ready to go, but the person in front of you in their state, they can't make right turns on red. So when they come down here, they do the exact same thing. Driving habits are very local. So when you come down here, there are a lot of different driving styles. There are people that come from the Midwest that are drive a little bit slower, and then there's the people from the Northeast that drive a little bit faster. You got to stop, slow down, and just enjoy where you are and embrace it, because it changes depending on the time of year. All right, now let's talk about the elephants in the room. Our next two topics, those are the ones that no one wants to talk about, especially not realtors, but we're going to face them head on. And the first elephant in the room is hurricanes.
That's right. Hurricanes are a regular occurrence here. Since we've moved here, we've experienced 3 hurricanes, one of them being very significant in Hurricane Ian, where we sustained 200-mile-an-hour plus winds, and there was significant damage all across the region. Most of that damage occurred from those really mature giant oak trees that litter all of our streets, and those branches came down heavy and penetrated a lot of roofs. I myself sustained some roof damage, but it was a great eye-opener that you have to take some precautions. Being prepared really makes all the difference. Now, I myself, I live in an older home. It's a block and stucco and concrete home. It's built to withstand the test of time. All those high winds, it didn't cause any damage whatsoever, just some cosmetic. But my wife and I, we made a decision early on. If there's anything category 3 or higher, we're packing up. We're having an impromptu hurricane vacation. We close our accordion shutters, and we have the peace of mind that that home is going to be there when we get back.
Yeah, well, during Hurricane Ian, my family, I actually decided to stay. I'm one of those people that I'd rather be here and deal with any kind of damage instead of, leaving town and then come back and then you have that surprise that's been there for a couple days. So for us, we're about preparing for it. So what do? We got a generator. And I recommend that everyone who moves to Florida get a generator, and then also get at least 5 to 6 5-gallons of gasoline and keep them here. You don't need to keep them full of gas. Just keep the gas tanks so that when the time comes, you're ready to go. You don't want to be a part of that rush that runs to Home Depot that waited too long and didn't get their supplies. So buy those things in the off season and prepare for it. One of the other things that you can prepare that's why we always sell new construction. Newer construction are better prepared homes for hurricanes. The regulations have changed and builders are required to make these fortresses. Many of new homes are coming with hurricane windows as standard from good builders. It's code now that you're going to have hurricane shutters, no doubt, but hurricane windows allow you to be able to watch the hurricane go by. This last 2 storms this year, we had our new windows in, and we were able to literally look outside, watch the whole hurricane happen. We could prepare. We could watch the branches on those big trees that Lanir mentioned, that if they were starting to come down, that you could go out and proactively deal with it. Other things that you could do to prepare for a hurricane are, what you jump into it, Lanir. What do you think?
Well, one thing we saw, and it was really, Caleb touched on it, is we have a lot of clients that move into that Wellen Park master plan, these new developments where, a lot of these people have moved in for their first year or 2. And we were proud that they all reported back to us after the last several storms that they sat home and they just watched the storm from their windows, eating popcorn, drinking wine, enjoying the spectacle that it was. But what they noticed, and what everyone noticed, is that these newer construction neighborhoods, it was like a blip in the radar. Power was only out for a short time, but a lot of these newer homes, they get the option of putting in that whole house generator. It's definitely money well spent. I myself, once the power goes out, I start freaking out. I have no Wi-Fi. I can't watch my favorite shows. I can't watch Stranger Things on Netflix. My son and I start to panic. That's why part of the reason why we get out of town, it has nothing to do with safety. It has something to do that we're spoiled. We're used to certain conveniences.
All I can say is I was watching movies during that hurricane once the power was out because my generator had kicked in and things were good at the Frick household, I can tell you.
Now, a little bit of science behind these hurricanes. This is not going to be a regular occurrence. We've experienced climate change across the world. We're not going to get into the politics of why climate change is happening, but it's happening. And water temps are high, and it's really changed the trajectory, the way these storms are happening. One of the other things you have to take into consideration when you're thinking about storms, and why Caleb and I talk about flood insurance all the time, is when you have these storms, sometimes you don't get a direct hit, but if you're south of the storm, you may have heard the word storm surge. I myself ignored that term before I moved down here, but now it's relevant. Storm surge is when that wind hits, that water gets displaced, it has to go somewhere. We definitely experience storm surges. We experience them just north of us up in Tampa, where there was devastating damage. But that's why we always think about being prepared. The early bird's going to get that worm. You want to move into a place that's secure, that has all of the things that you thought about. They're going to protect you from a hurricane. And Caleb and I are here to guide you in that direction. So there's no worries. We have different plans. We have different approaches. Both work. Both give you the peace of mind. You're not going to be in harm's way.
And if you want to reach out to us or leave a comment, you have a hurricane concern or question, or what did you guys do? Definitely do it in our comments. Let us know your thoughts. Maybe you lived through a hurricane. What was it like for you, and what did you learn from it? Definitely leave us a comment and let us know what you think about hurricanes.
Now, I think we've covered quite a bit of hurricanes. We want to talk about one thing that I'm telling you nobody's talking about. They don't want to talk about. It's kind of larger than the elephant in the room, but we have an environmental, natural occurring thing called red tide. That's right, red tide. If you haven't heard about red tide before, it's a natural occurring algae bloom. It feeds off of nitrogen, and so there's certainly accelerants within this area. You know, when you use fertilizers and you have septic tanks and you have runoff, flat land, the water has to go somewhere. So we notice after large storms that there's a uptick of nitrogen, which feeds that algae, which starves the water of oxygen, and it can be very evident that it's going on. It's a pungent smell, a rotten smell, sometimes accompanied by large fish kills, but it is a reality, and it's not local just to here. It's a worldwide event. Red tide occurs along any coast. Here we've seen an accelerant the last several years where it's not happening all the time. You have it come, when we first moved here, we had a whole summer where we couldn't go into the water. It's just something you subscribe, you understand. But the beautiful thing about this is that a lot of our clients move inland. They move into that Wellen Park area. You're several miles inland. And when red tide was occurring, when we had it sitting and hovering for some time, we were happy to report that all of our clients in Wellen Park, and we noticed it because I live next to the coast. I can feel it. I can certainly, I was just exposed to it. I myself have asthma and some predispositions, so we're very sensitive to it. But what you do is you get a whole house filter. You learn to mitigate it. It's no different than allergy season. Some people are extremely sensitive, some are not. But it's something we had to get on. Caleb, you're not as sensitive to red tide as me, right?
No, surprisingly, Lanir and I live about the same distance from the Gulf of Mexico. But at my house, it's rare that I experience it. So I think a lot of it depends on, is there backwater inlets that red tide can come in there and sneak in, and then it hangs out and it kind of, for a month or so. Or is it just, does it move along? The one thing that's good about red tide is it's typically, when it does come to this area, it's rather localized. So if you want to still go to the beach, all you have to do is go a little bit north or a little bit south of it. And
just look at the red tide report.
Yeah, there's red tide reports. There's apps you can use so that you can learn where it is today. And surprisingly, it'll pop up 50 miles down the coast overnight, and then you'll clear out. So it's something that you really need to understand, stay aware of, and it's something you can live with and live around, to be honest.
Well, if you do have some serious health concerns, serious health conditions, moving just a little bit inland really rectifies that. You can still celebrate and enjoy the beach. It's not here all the time. We were very fortunate this past season. We had a few small pockets after some rains, but it washed away. That cold weather definitely lends to it. But red tide is something that they're never going to mention to you, but it's super important, especially if you have a loved one that has some predispositions. We take a lot of care. We really care about our clients. We want them to have the best experience. We understand that not everything is perfect. Every area has its flaws and downfalls, but the things that we celebrate here by far outweigh any one of these anomalies. And we've covered quite a bit today. We had natural fears. We had the natural healthy respect for all of these things. And until you experience a hurricane, until you meet a gator, until you see ants the size of humans, you don't know how, okay, not the size of humans, but they're pretty large. They don't talk, but I talk to them. That's a different story and a different podcast. But we believe that it's extremely important to be informed. Caleb and myself, we are family men. We believe that everyone in this community is an extension of our family. We want you to come down here, celebrate 300 plus days of sunshine, live that never ending summer, and without regrets.
Yeah, definitely there is a trade-off. And overall, after 4 years of living here, we absolutely love it. Despite all of these things that now we've learned and now we're fully aware of, I absolutely love it down here. I have no regrets whatsoever. It was the best thing that we could have done for our family and move into an area where we can just enjoy living eternal summer and just outside living, and just the quality of life is just so daggone good that I'm willing to put up with some of these, bugs and hurricanes and red tide and a little bit more traffic here and there. It's all well worth it. And I'm telling you, folks, come down here, check it out. You won't regret it.
Now, listen, friends, do us a favor. If you enjoyed this video, if you felt like it was informative, if you have a friend that's moving or a family that's moving, share with them this video. But if you really enjoyed it, hit that like button. It goes a long ways in supporting our business and letting others know that we have great information. Caleb and myself, we come out with weekly videos covering Venice, Florida, the surrounding area, everything real estate, lifestyle. We are experts. We are relocation experts, and we want you to be informed. So if you want to be notified, hit that bell and that subscription button so you're the first to learn about all the latest developments. But we love what we do. We love this area. We're super proud of this community, and we want you to come down here and be a part of this community.
Absolutely. So I think that covers it. So for This Week in Venice, Florida, I'm Caleb.
And I'm Lanir.
And we'll see you next week.